After a sleepless night on the rooftop in the city, leaving all the hustle and chaos behind, I have finally returned home. Returning home after a long day spent under the burning sun, wrestling with the harrowing machine across the terraced fields alongside my uncle, my entire body was sore and aching. But in return, that night, I fell into a deep sleep, something I hadn't experienced in all 4 years of living in the city. Waking up this morning, the very first thing I decided to do was put the 300 million VND debt aside for now. Dealing with debt is a long journey, and overthinking it only exhausts my mind further. If I want to start over, I first need to settle into a stable living space. This thatched roof wooden house has been with me for my entire 23 years, since the day I took my very first breath. It holds all my childhood memories, filled with both warmth and painful aching voids. When I was 14 years old, just a 9th grader, my parents divorced. Each of them moved on to build their own separate lives. From that moment on, I began a journey of complete independence, taking care of everything on my own without any safety net to lean on. With no one living here or caring for it for so many years, the old house is now completely overgrown with wild weeds, engulfing every corner of the yard and walkway. Looking at this dense, messy garden feels just like looking at my own chaotic life over the past few years. But that's okay. By clearing away each patch of weeds and wiping off every layer of dust settled on the wooden pillars, a clean and peaceful space will slowly emerge. I will rebuild my life piece by piece, right here where it all began.
Hello everyone. After deciding to put all my worries aside, today I officially got to work on cleaning up this place. Stepping inside, the house felt shockingly empty. There is no TV, no refrigerator, not even a decent rice cooker. After all, nobody has lived here for years. I just swept through the interior to get rid of the heavy dust so I'd have a place to lie down. Then poured all my time and energy into the battle outside. All around the house, wild weeds have grown into a small jungle, taller than a person and completely swallowing up every walkway. Armed with just a scythe and a hoe, I began clearing it patch by patch. This cleanup task is taking far more time and energy than I ever imagined. No matter how much I chop and dig, looking back, the wall of weeds barely seems to shrink. Under the harsh sun, sweat dripped into my eyes, soaking completely through my shirt. My hands, already sore from harrowing the fields yesterday, began to blister and sting with every swing of the scythe. Yet strangely, this raw physical pain and exhaustion actually helped quiet my mind. Looking at the dense, tangled jungle of weeds in front of me, I couldn't help but reflect on my years of struggling out in the city. Having to fend for myself since I was 14, with no support system and no one to guide me. All those years spent barely keeping my head above water, doing any job just to survive, then recklessly jumping into business, taking out high-interest loans, and piling up debt. My life over the past few years felt just like these wild weeds, chaotic, suffocating, and completely lost. Out there, people fight tooth and nail for money and status. As for me, after the most painful crashes of my youth, here I am, holding a scythe covered in dirt and cut grass, clearing my life piece by piece on my own ancestral land. There are still so many weeds left around the house, and it will definitely take much more time to finish clearing them all. But that's okay. One swing of the scythe at a time, one patch of weeds at a time. Eventually, everything will be clear again. I went through so many hardships during those years, but looking back, just being alive, healthy, and free from illness is already a massive blessing. Seeing both my parents move on with their own lives, I'm truly glad they are healthy. It just hurts a little to realize that in their new families, there's no place for me. I have a younger brother who stayed with my mother, while I, being older, chose to stand on my own feet. During my high school years, I lived with my paternal grandparents. My maternal grandparents passed away long ago. I remember my grandmother passed when I was only in 7th or 8th grade. She loved my mother and me dearly. Do you see that patch of sugarcane I was clearing earlier? That sugarcane was planted by my grandmother's own hands over a decade ago. To this day, as old stalks die, new ones keep sprouting. The sugarcane is still here. But my grandmother is gone. My grandparents had 13 children in total, but tragically lost one, leaving 12 siblings. Among them, my mother was the youngest daughter, with only one younger uncle below her. born into such a massive family during a time of extreme poverty. My mother was the smallest in stature and constantly suffered from frequent illnesses since childhood. Back then, from the 1980s through the early 2000s, Vietnam's economy, especially in rural countryside areas, was painfully underdeveloped. Mechanized farming didn't exist yet, and life revolved entirely around hard manual labor on small, barren plots of land. For a family with a dozen children, simply putting food on the table every single day was a monumental struggle, let alone affording proper healthcare or medical attention. Driven by poverty and a traditional ethnic custom of that time, families struggling with fertility would adopt a relative's child to offer prayers to ancestors, believing it would bring children of their own. Because my mother was small, fragile, and one of the youngest, she was given away as an adopted child to her own oldest brother's family. Loving her sick child, my grandmother went along to care for her. But as you know, few people treat an adopted child like their own. My mother lived there for 3 years, and once they had a child of their own, her life became even harder and more heartbreaking. It wasn't until 2002 that my mother got married, and in 2003 I was born. Even then, life in our village remained deeply impoverished. As a farming family with barely any land to cultivate, every meal was a struggle. Yet it was through those very hardships and sacrifices of the generation before me that I grew up and learned the true meaning of resilience. During those years, poverty was not just reflected in the meager meals. It was deeply etched into every drop of sweat and every calloused scar on the hands of the people in my homeland. Relying on a few small plots of terraced fields was nowhere near enough to feed a family of more than 10 people. When the rice fields down in the valley couldn't fill their stomachs, my family had no choice but to turn their eyes toward the distant mountains. Survival pushed my grandparents and my mother high up into the hills to reclaim wild land from the dense forests. The steep trails were made of nothing but sharp limestone and grass as sharp as razor blades, where bare feet had to dig deep into the slippery mud with every step. Back then, their only tools were rusted iron hoes and machetes. They had to cut down wild trees, pry heavy boulders out of the earth, and turn over every inch of barren, stony soil just to plant corn and cassava. So many times, right after the seeds were sown, a sudden downpour would sweep down from the mountain peaks, washing away both the young corn sprouts and the fertile topsoil they had painstakingly tilled. But the people of my hometown were fiercely resilient. If the soil washed away, they dug it again. If the sprouts died, they planted new ones. Meals back then rarely had any rice, just boiled cassava dipped in chili salt, or quickly swallowed cornmeal just to make it up the mountain before sunrise. Beyond that, building a wooden thatched house like the one I am standing in today was an epic saga written in blood and sweat by the generation before me. Back then, there were no proper roads, no machinery, and no tractors. To get timber for the house, my grandfather and the older uncles had to pack machetes, axes, and roasted cassava, venturing deep into the ancient, untouched jungles. Those jungle trips often lasted for weeks. They slept deep in the forest, erecting temporary huts out of wild leaves, burning campfires at night to ward off wild beasts and the bone-chilling cold of the northern mountains. Finding a large, straight tree that wasn't rotten was hard enough, but felling it and hand-sawing it into timber beams was a life-or-death challenge. Equipped only with long two-man handsaws, one person would stand on top of the timber frame while the other stood down in a pit, taking sawdust straight into their eyes and mouth. They pulled the saw back and forth thousands of times under the sweltering jungle heat. And once the timber was cut, how did they haul those heavy wooden beams weighing hundreds of kilograms down from the mountain peaks to the valley? It all relied on raw human strength. Using bare shoulders and woven jungle vines, they dragged and carried every single beam across raging streams and treacherous ravines. A single slip of the foot and a massive timber beam could crush a person in a split second. Beyond gathering wood to build a house, the deep forest was their only lifeline during the lean months between harvests. My mother and grandmother would strap woven baskets to their backs, trekking deep into the woods to forage for bamboo shoots and wild vegetables to trade at the district market for small bags of rice. Bamboo shoots grew deep inside dense, thorny thickets. Getting them meant crawling through sharp thorns that tore through clothing and scratched their bare skin. There were days they left before dawn and didn't return until the moon hung high over the mountain peaks, carrying heavy baskets of bamboo shoots with aching legs and backs that felt completely broken. Looking back on that entire journey, I finally understand why this thatched wooden house is so sacred. Every wooden pillar, every brick, every inch of the yard surrounding it is soaked in the sweat, blood, and tears of my grandparents and my mother. An entire generation drained their strength in the deep mountains just to leave behind a place for their children to call home. So today, as a 23-year-old guy carrying a 300 million VND debt, even if I crashed and burned out in the city, how does my struggle compare to the hardships the previous generation endured? Holding this scythe, clearing patch after patch of wild weeds today, I am not merely clearing a physical space. I am clearing my own mindset and my will, learning to live a life worthy of the sweat that was poured into this very land. My paternal grandmother once told me that on the day I took my very first breath, my father was deep in the jungle chopping wood. Hearing the news, he rushed back home. But sadly, his love for me from that day on was never truly whole. My father was not a man who knew how to love his family. On days he didn't work, he spent every single night drowning himself in alcohol. Fueled by the toxic words and instigations of others, he would come home and take his rage out on my mother and me. From the time I was a small child until I grew up, I never knew what a complete family or a proper loving home felt like. To this very day, those memories remain a terrifying nightmare that I can never shake off. So many nights, I still dream of those beatings and screams, waking up in a cold sweat with a heart pounding in fear. It became so deeply ingrained in my blood that even now, if someone simply raises their voice or shouts loudly, I flinch uncontrollably. Consumed by automatic fear, I still remember times when my father grabbed whatever he could find to chase and beat my mother. The most painful memory was when my mother, pushed to absolute despair and agony, mixed rat poison to end her life. Back then, I was just a helpless little child. All I could do was cry in sheer helplessness before sprinting as fast as my small legs could carry me to call my grandparents to save her just in time. Standing before the violent battles of adults, a child like me felt completely powerless. I was so utterly exhausted and drained by that toxic environment. Later on, even after my parents divorced and no longer lived under the same roof, the endless arguments and conflicts never stopped. Sometimes I honestly couldn't understand why people could inflict so much pain on one another. Now, facing this heavy mountain of 300 million VND debt, I dare not tell anyone in my family. I know that if my father found out, he would berate and curse at me without mercy. Having never had a shoulder to lean on since I was a child, now that I have fallen, I know I must quietly bear this heavy cross all on my own. So today marks my third day back home. Honestly, after a long day of grueling work clearing out the dense jungle of weeds around the house, my body was completely drained. Last night, right after taking a shower, I collapsed onto the bed and fell asleep instantly. My entire body was aching and my blistered hands stung so much that I didn't even have the energy or appetite to cook or eat anything at all. But in return, waking up this morning, I felt a deep sense of comfort and relief in my mind. No jarring alarm clocks, no overwhelming panic about debts like during those suffocating days in the city. Morning in the countryside is strangely peaceful, with a crisp, cool breeze drifting through the wooden crevices that genuinely soothe my sore body. Since I went to bed on an empty stomach last night, my belly started rumbling. So today I want to take you along to visit a very special place, a humble noodle shop I used to frequent for breakfast back in my high school days. It has been such a long time since I last stepped foot here. Even though the shop is located a full 7 kilometers away from my house, a pretty long distance just for breakfast, whenever I get the chance to return to my hometown, no matter how busy I am, I always make a point to ride over for a bowl. Because this place holds so many cherished memories of my innocent youth. This small noodle shop is deeply tied to memories of my best friend from high school. Back then, the two of us were inseparable. We went everywhere together, from morning classes and hanging out after school to sharing our wildest dreams for the future. And this roadside shop was our absolute go-to spot every single morning. We were so poor back then, with barely any pocket money from our grandparents. But whenever we scraped together enough for a piping hot bowl of noodles, slurpingly laughing and chatting away, that happiness was pure and unforgettable. It was one of the rare times in my life when I felt like a normal kid, temporarily escaping the painful wounds of my broken home. Now, My dear friend has moved on with his own life, each of us taking different paths and carrying our own heavy burdens. I rode those 7 kilometers alone today on an old motorbike borrowed from my younger brother. But as I handled the bike along the familiar country road, taking in the trees and aging houses on both sides, every high school memory came rushing back as vividly as if it were just yesterday. Life out there may knock me down and strip away many things, but the beautiful memories and peace rooted in this place can never be stolen from me. Today, tasting that familiar flavor of my youth once again, I feel re-energized and ready to face whatever tough road lies ahead. After enjoying that nostalgia-filled bowl of noodles from my school days, on my way back home, I pulled over at a small countryside market by the road. After days of exhausting physical labor, from harrowing the fields to clearing out the wild brush, my body was deeply drained and needed a proper, nourishing meal to regain my strength. I decided to buy some fresh pork to cook lunch for myself. Pork in my hometown is still mostly raised the traditional way without industrial feed, so the meat is firm, savory, and rich in natural flavor, an authentic taste that is almost impossible to find in the hustle of the city. Returning to our old wooden house, I began cleaning up the interior space, a place that had been forgotten under thick layers of dust for years. Holding a bamboo broom, I stepped into the small kitchen, once the most rustic yet warmest heart of our home. The kitchen was starkly bare, no refrigerator, no TV, not even a proper rice cooker. As I was diligently sweeping away the accumulated dust, cobwebs clinging to the bamboo walls and the rusted tripod stove. My grandmother slowly walked in. She sat down on an old wooden stool nearby, quietly watching me sweep before the two of us began to talk. While moving the broom across every corner of the kitchen floor, I listened to her catch me up on family news and how her and my grandfather's health had been lately, only for my heart to sink right there in that time-worn kitchen when she casually mentioned that she is currently suffering from kidney stones. She shared that sharp back pains had been tormenting her every night, but she didn't dare go to the hospital for a checkup, fearing it would strain the family's finances. Hearing those words, my hands holding the broom froze mid-air. Looking at her hunched back, her thin hands laced with prominent veins, and the deep wrinkles carved into her face by time, an overwhelming sense of powerlessness washed over me. Right now, when the person I love most, the one who sheltered me throughout my childhood, is enduring pain and illness, I, a 23-year-old man, don't even have a single extra penny in my pocket to take her for a proper checkup or buy her nutritional supplements. That feeling of absolute helplessness felt far more bitter, cruel, and crushing than any 300 million VND debt waiting for me out in the world. Throughout my high school years, when my immediate family shattered, my paternal grandparents were my only peaceful sanctuary. Back then, whenever arguments broke out at home or on cold, rainy nights, I would beg to sleep next to them just to feel safe and warm. Although during my school years, I lacked parental affection, proper care, and guidance, to the point where my education was fragmented, my English remained basic. And even now, I have to rely on this AI voice to share my deepest thoughts with you. I never once allowed myself to give up or deteriorate. Growing up in a complex environment surrounded by countless temptations and bad influences, I never once succumbed to social vices. I didn't follow the wrong crowd, never chased shallow trends, and strictly ensured I never caused my parents or grandparents headaches or worries. Because even as a young kid, I was acutely aware of a harsh reality. If anything happened to me, if I fell into trouble, no one would be there to shield me, worry for me, or carry my weight. My parents had moved on with their own separate lives. They wouldn't and couldn't manage mine. I may have been born into poverty, raised without complete love, and today I might be standing at the absolute rock bottom of failure with a mountain of debt. But I will never lose my resolve. I will never allow life to push me into the abyss of moral decay. The more bitter life gets, the more determined I am to keep a clear head and an honest heart. I must stand up resiliently, rebuild my life from scratch, and become a good, decent man. So that one day, when my future children and grandchildren look back at their father's journey through the storm, they can feel proud and use it as an anchor and a guiding light to rise above whatever challenges life throws their way. Standing in the bare, empty kitchen, looking at my sick grandmother while being completely unable to help, I was suddenly forced to face the cruel reality before me. My 300 million VND debt still hung over my head like a massive boulder crushing my shoulders. If I truly want to rebuild my life and take care of my grandparents, I cannot just sit here drowning in self-pity and guilt forever. I need a concrete, realistic plan for the days ahead. Speaking of daily living expenses, back in the city, a few $100,000 dong would vanish from your pocket in the blink of an eye. But here in the countryside, life is vastly simpler. Living alone, cooking simple meals, and living frugally, I only need about 100,000 VND a day, which is roughly $3 to $4 US to cover my absolute basic survival needs. This low cost of living in the village is my very first anchor, keeping me from drowning under immediate financial pressure. However, that 100,000 VND only covers basic survival. What about the massive 300 million VND debt waiting outside? Where will the money for my grandmother's medical expenses and hospital visits come from? That is the real puzzle keeping me awake every single night. Desperate yet refusing to surrender, I started searching everywhere around the area for any job opportunity. Initially, I planned to find a construction site nearby to work as a laborer, doing heavy physical work just to earn a daily wage for basic living. But in rural areas, construction jobs aren't always available, and after searching through neighboring villages, I couldn't find anyone hiring. Fortunately, just when I was feeling stuck, I recently managed to secure a new job working as a house painter. The contractor who took me in happens to be an old high school classmate of mine. Since we've known each other since youth and understand each other well, working with him gives me a deep sense of security, knowing I won't be mistreated or taken advantage of. He promised that in just a few days, as soon as I finish clearing up my house here, I can jump straight into work. The daily wage for painting ranges from 300,000 to 400,000 VND, which translates to roughly 12 to 16 US a day. For a rural countryside area, this is a solid and reliable income. If I work hard, take extra shifts, and pinch every single penny, it won't just cover my daily food. I can also set aside a small portion to help my grandparents with medicine, while slowly saving up bit by bit to start my debt repayment journey. A long journey of paying off hundreds of millions begins with these very bills of 300,000 or 400,000 dong earned through honest sweat and hard physical labor. Well, I think I'll pause today's heartfelt chat about my future plans and debts right here. Right now, I need to hurry back outside to finish the cleanup work waiting in the yard. All the wild weeds, thick brush, and dead branches I cleared out over the past 2 days are still lying in huge piles surrounding the house. Today, I must gather everything into one spot and burn it all completely. Up here in the mountainous region, the weather is incredibly unpredictable. If I don't burn this dried grass quickly before the rain comes pouring down, the whole pile will get soaked. Once wet, it will be impossible to burn, rotting away and making the entire yard damp and muddy, meaning all my grueling labor under the hot sun over the last few days would completely go to waste. And speaking of the rain coming, I look up at the weathered ancient wooden roof of our house, and a deep fear grips my heart. This house has gone without maintenance for so many years. The wooden pillars are eaten away by termites, and the thatched roofing is thin and tattered. Every time dark clouds gather and the sky turns gloomy, my heart starts pounding uncontrollably. Because I know all too well that if a heavy downpour strikes right now, this fragile, leaning wooden house could completely collapse at any moment. Every time it rains, the fear inside me intensifies tenfold. My roof is covered with aging palm leaves mixed with badly deteriorated fibrocement sheets, capable of collapsing at any given moment. Inside, the entire wooden pillar and beam structure, left unattended for decades, has been hollowed out by termites, leaving almost no strength to support the house. Living in such a fragile shelter, it would be a lie to say I'm not scared. But for now, in my current predicament, I can only shrug it off, taking life one day at a time and figuring things out as I go. For now, I'll set all those worries aside. I head into the kitchen to start the fire, cook lunch, and after eating, lie down for a quick nap to recharge. Tomorrow, I'll get right back to cleaning. Once the yard is cleared and the house is roughly patched up, I plan to start raising some chickens, ducks, and pigs. My hometown is in a rural, mountainous region, blessed with an abundant year-round supply of fresh natural water flowing down from the mountain streams. This water source makes it ideal to build a small pond for raising fish or letting ducks swim around. It will be my very first step towards self-sufficiency and slowly rebuilding my finances. My lunch today is very simple yet comforting. Stir-fried bamboo shoots, tofu and tomato sauce, and a bowl of refreshing loofah soup to cool down after hours of exhausting work. Let me break down my daily expenses for you to see. Breakfast bowl of noodles, 25,000 dollars to 10. $1 USD block of tofu, 10,000 VND. 0.40 USD 2 tomatoes, 5,000 VND. 0.20 USD 2 loofah gourds, 8,000 VND. 0.32 USD fresh bamboo shoots, bought 20,000 VND. 0 to 80 USD worth, but it was too much, so I only cooked half, roughly 10,000 VND. 0.40 USD for this meal. In total, my entire spending for today, from breakfast to ingredients for lunch and dinner, amounted to just 68,000 VND, roughly 2.72 USD. Living a day in the countryside means doing without a lot of things, but with such minimal living costs, I feel a sense of calm returning to my soul. Now I'll go enjoy my meal and get some rest. Thank you all so much for watching and standing by me on this journey to rebuild my life. See you all in the next video.